Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Trail Mix, where the nuts might be a little stale, but the company is always fresh.
Craig Crawford here, retired journalist, working for nothing but the truth and Social Security check. And we got Dick Cheney's funeral on here in the background, and we got Jamie in the house. Hello, Jamie.
Hello there. I was watching on my TV and thought I would join you.
Yeah. My reaction to this is Dick Cheney finally got something right. He did not invite Donald Trump to his funeral.
I don't think Liz is speaking to our illustrious White House resident.
No, I don't think so.
I was watching a little earlier and they showed an image of Biden and Jill, and Biden looks alert and just fine, thank you.
Yeah. And I also noticed Al Gore was there, and the whole time I saw him, he was on his phone.
Yeah, all of the former VPs are there.
Yeah. Here they're. I've got the C-SPAN on right now, but I think CNN might have a little better camera work.
I'm watching MS now, and they look great.
I'll go over and check them in a second. But here's CNN. Yeah, they're showing the front row here. You got boy, is that George W. on the left? He's lost a lot of hair.
Yeah. He's also looking totally bored with the whole thing.
Biden and Jill. Oh, there's Harris with Pence.
Uh-huh.
I bet they got a few things to talk about. I bet they could have a sharing session about life with the Donald. Huh.
Yeah, I think none of them look like they're particularly interested in the goings on.
Oh, there's Gore in the background. I see Gore in the background there.
Yeah.
He just doesn't show up very often. I don't know. I guess I'm a nerd. These things. Well, I guess you are too. We're both watching this, but I think these funerals, are. It's always interesting to see when it's a all hands on deck kind of event for past presidents and vice presidents and politicians.
I'm the same way, because you almost never get to see them all together.
Yeah. And you see them in kind of a personal setting where it's not, it's formal and all, but earlier I was watching them all kind of interacting with you. I saw Mitch McConnell shaking hands with people, and I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see them in a different setting than press conferences.
Right.
Go see how. Now, I also like to get a kick out of looking at the various camera work. It looks like MSNBC's got the same feed.
After January 6th,
MS Now, I should say.
Discussed what had
and
transpired.
the flags will come back down tomorrow, because they only had to go down until after the funeral by law. I thought it was interesting that they commented that Trump hadn't ordered it, that they were just simply obeying the law about VPs.
It's kind of like Pam Bondi said yesterday about him signing the bill to release the Epstein files. She said, "I will follow the law," which means I'm going to do as little as possible.
I thought that was what he was already doing when he wasn't exceed what should be possible.
So flags at half-mast is they're following the law. They're doing as little as possible to honor Dick Cheney. I wonder, Liz Cheney was going to make sure Trump wasn't invited. Vance also was not invited. But I wonder if Dick Cheney, if he had that discussion and said, do not invite him. Barbara Bush did. Barbara Bush told her family, do not invite that man to my funeral.
No, he is the one that they all regret is there.
Now, Melania went to Barbara's funeral. She did let him invite Melania because I guess they were actually had some contact, but she made sure that Trump wasn't. Boy.
Well, George W. is supposed to actually speak, so
yeah,
we'll hear more out of him.
I don't know if I watched the entire. I watch them all. I watched the entire. Hell, I watched Bob Dole's funeral, but I watched the whole Barbara Bush funeral, and it actually was kind of entertaining. I mean, the children's speeches, or I guess what do we call them? Speeches? What do we call them? But they were kind of funny.
Yeah, I spent my morning trying to get my WordPress blog straightened out so that things post where they're supposed to.
Now, I don't know if you ever did go ahead and get a Chat GPT account, but man alive, that is where I find it so useful, is helping me navigate WordPress. I mean, because Chat GPT knows all the tricks with WordPress and how to navigate and troubleshoot. This morning.
I basically decided it wasn't worth the $20 a month because I'm having, like whole lot of people out there, I'm having to be careful with pennies these days.
Yeah, and it's not like the Social Security cost of living is going to make us rich.
It isn't going up anywhere near the real cost of living.
Yeah, and particularly when you factor in Medicare's taking a bigger chunk now.
Right. Yeah, my Medicare is jumping from $180 to $215. So I'm basically ending up with a $5 profit that isn't enough to be profitable.
Yeah. But anyway, what else is going on? We got lot of Epstein happenings. Did you catch any of this stuff I've been putting up about his brother last night on CNN? I mean, his brother said some very interesting things. I mean, he said them before, but he's saying them now. It's more pertinent now. It's more timely. And he's saying it on national TV.
Well, particularly a post of what's on the flight logs. Because a lot, like the Clintons flew it a lot because they were going back and forth to Africa with their Clinton Foundation work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of innocent people on the flights because that's how he was currying relationships with those people.
Yeah.
But they should be releasing the flight logs and the banking information. Sure, there's going to be a lot of innocent names in both, but let's get it out there where people can look at it.
Yeah. And the brother, the one I just posted an hour or so ago, the brother's pointing out, and I had never thought about this till he brought it up about Trump's own flight log, his plane. That we ought to be looking at his flight log.
Oh, that's right. He did have his own private plane before he started billing the taxpayers for ours.
And I'm actually going over to get that right now.
Now that's a question. Are the Qataris replacing his personal plane, or are they replacing Air Force One?
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's going to keep that plane, that Qatar plane. I know he is. You just know it.
Yeah, because they have not canceled the order from Boeing.
Yeah. And here's what I just posted. This is from last night. Mark Epstein, his brother, talking about this, and I'd never had heard this particular angle before.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein because I thought he was a sick pervert.
No, not whatsoever. Jeff and Donald were very good friends through the 90s, and I don't know exactly when it ended. They were really good friends. They used to fly in each other's planes. Like I said, they say Donald was on Jeff's plane like 7 times, but I question, have they checked Donald's flight logs from those days to see how many times Jeffrey was on his plane? Because I know Jeffrey told me on a number of occasions that he flew up or flew down with Donald on his plane. But they were, and Donald was in Jeffrey's office quite a bit. They were good friends. Everybody around knew that.
I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein because I thought he was a sick pervert.
And if he was a sick pervert, why didn't you tell anybody?
Yeah. But that has not come up before, because Trump's always saying, I was only on his flight log 7 times, or I only flew on Epstein's plane 7 times. But this is such an interesting point Epstein's brother brings up. Somebody needs to pull Trump's plane's logs and see how many times Epstein flew on his plane. I wonder if Trump even kept logs or if it's required. I don't know. Who knows?
If you're in the area, it's required that you file a flight log. It doesn't say who you have to have on it. I don't.
Yeah, do you have to put passengers on a flight log?
I think only numbers, not names.
That would make sense. That'd get kind of unwieldy and I would think, a lot of private plane owners wouldn't want to be getting into that kind of thing.
Well, except when a celebrity plane goes down killing people, they know who was on the plane. But is that after the fact or beforehand?
Yeah. But this Epstein brother, I've been trying to follow him. He doesn't get a lot of national coverage. This CNN hit last night on Erin Burnett, who I must give credit to for staying on the Epstein case throughout. She's really not let it get away. But she had him on last night, and then about a week ago, he was on News Nation, that channel News Nation. But prior to that, I've only been able to find him on things like Australian TV, which I think is where he lives. He never goes on camera. It's always audio. I guess it's a security thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. He says he's been threatened. So.
Yeah. But now here's also the other clip that I pulled, and I've got a couple more coming. I'm not done with him. I mean, I pulled a lot of stuff from him last night on CNN. But here's where he gets into what he said before, but it got me kind of focused on this whole suicide question.
Because when I first heard he was dead from an apparent suicide, I didn't doubt it. Just because he was in a jail cell, I figured, okay, he decided to take himself out. And I respected that decision. He didn't have any children. He didn't have our parents were gone. There was no reason in that respect him not to. But then when they did the autopsy the next day, and they said it looked more like a homicide than a suicide, that's when, whoa, what's going on here? And then we start looking into it, and then we see all the anomalies in the prison. And also Jeffrey had a hearing coming up to appeal his bail decision. And he was going to be putting up what would have been the highest bail in United States history. There's a chance he could have gotten bail, in which case he'd be living in his house with an ankle monitor on, with armed guards and cameras to make sure he didn't go anywhere. And, so why would he kill himself? Or why would anybody kill himself before that hearing?
There's plenty of evidence. There's plenty of evidence to support the suicide theory, but this guy raises some interesting points to question.
And
that.
there is the missing minutes.
Oh yeah, and
Yeah,
I mean he makes 2 points. The 2 points that struck me that he makes that make you wonder is that the autopsy was not really conclusive about suicide, and what he's actually referring to, I discovered, is the family. Epstein family did hire a medical examiner who's very well credentialed, who said that that the evidence of the autopsy was more consistent with a homicide than a suicide. So there's that. And the other is the point that he makes that Epstein was on the verge of a bail hearing where he was going to pay the biggest bail fine in history, American history, and was likely going to be able to get out of jail, but in a ankle bracelet or confined to his home or whatever. But he was about to get out of jail probably, and that's when he chooses to commit suicide, when he's almost about probably going to get out of jail. That's also a good point.
Yeah, I tend to stay away from conspiracies, but you at least want to ask the questions.
So that got me going this morning, doing a trail mix brief on this, and but I asked my AI Sam to help me put it together, and we really focused on the best argument for both sides, not trying to take a side. And I mean, the suicide conclusion, the medical examiner's autopsy was found no medical evidence contradicting the determination of a suicide by hanging, which I found interesting language. Maybe that's how medical examiners talk, but no medical evidence contradicting. That's different than saying medical evidence proving it was a suicide.
Right.
Then there's lots of discussion about neck injuries and.
Well, that's in line with you can't prove a negative.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we go through all the points that are made by those who say it was a suicide, but then we get down here to, what challenges. Here's what you were just talking about, the prison security system. There's a 3-minute gap exists due to what they call camera malfunction, and adjacent cameras captured uninterrupted video, but not the crucial angle. So the only camera that malfunctioned was the one that was the most crucial for seeing whether anybody had gone into the cell or not. Now that does make you wonder.
Well, it's not up there with Nixon's 18, but
yeah, 3 minutes.
It's long enough.
Because the thing that's important about that is one factor in the DOJ's conclusion that it was suicide was that there was no evidence of forced entry or any entry into his cell before he supposedly hung himself. Well, they're basing that on a lack of information, unless they had it, and I don't know. But there's a 3-minute gap of a camera that would have found any entry, and we don't. And it
were the guards
doesn't exist.
Supposedly snoozing or something.
Well, they did acknowledge that even in the DOJ conclusion that it was suicide, that the guards were lax, but they said it didn't really matter because no one entered the room, and of course it did matter that they weren't monitoring him to prevent him from committing suicide. And then I wish Blue was here because this is one of her favorite topics. But anyway, then the other thing that supports or tends to support the challengers of that it was suicide is the autopsy by independent experts. This Michael Baden here that family hired, he wrote that Epstein's neck fractures are more consistent with homicidal strangulation than suicide.
Yeah, that's that hyaloid bone.
Yeah, and then it says the hyoid fracture appeared unusual in pattern and severity. And then you mentioned the guard behavior and the logs that they falsified as being.
Could something have been substituted so that the gap was longer than the 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's a thought. Yeah,
I mean, you want to play conspiracy? I can play conspiracy.
Yeah. But you could almost argue that the conclusion that he committed suicide is a conspiracy theory.
Right.
That he. But the bottom line thing about this inquiry about the suicide is it happened during Donald Trump's administration. Donald Trump was president at the time that we are talking about here.
Well, the most believable thing I've heard was the brothers, the supposed Trump, the supposed Epstein quote about Trump was, "He's dirty."
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, because way back when The Apprentice was on, I knew the man was a phony sleaze. And why no one said it at the time? You know, the whole business about the university and the stakes and the apartment and the supposed contract with The Apprentice. I knew it was phony.
Yeah.
And how that man got elected has always been beyond me.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had been campaigning against him, I would have had the producer of The Apprentice up and facing a whole lot of questions.
Well, you know, that Mark Burnett, who was the big boss of Apprentice, who he originally wanted Bill Gates, I think it was. He went through a couple of people before he got to Trump.
Well, he knew he could get Trump because Trump was broke.
Yeah. And he has never been forthcoming about the truth.
He and his biblically perfect wife. Yeah.
So we never
They're
have.
in that whole professional Christian class.
Trying to see.
You knew
anyway, I've got it somewhere, but going back to your point about that Epstein said he was a crook, I've got that. That was going to be my next clip I was going to post from that interview last night with Epstein's brother.
Feel free to add my sentiments to it because and Burnett himself, the whole article that he put up about why Trump was selected for the show.
Yeah. Oh, they're bringing the
casket in. Yeah.
Casket in now. Let's see. Oh, we'll get a little sound on this one.
I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though his body be destroyed, yet shall I see God.
Dick Cheney buried
I shall see for myself,
in Washington
and
today.
mine eyes shall behold.
I think this is the National Cathedral. I think they're going to bury him at the National Cathedral. Did I see that? I think.
I thought that they were going to put it at the home of the Northeast.
Himself.
That what?
You know, they're
we live.
They're home
we
from
live unto the Lord.
Not in Texas, but they're home where the original.
Utah?
Yeah. Let me see if we know.
Whether we live, therefore,
I don't know. I easily could have misheard. I thought I heard someone say that because people are buried at National Cathedral, and I think Woodrow Wilson is.
for they rest from their labors.
It says there is no public information about the internment.
Oh, really? Well, then maybe that's going to be private.
The Cheney family of Manchester, Connecticut has a family cemetery.
In Connecticut?
Well, the cemetery is in Manchester, Connecticut.
Huh. I never knew of him having a Connecticut connection.
Yeah. And Mary Cheney has a residence in Great Falls, Virginia.
Huh.
So there is no information released as to where he will be interred. So I guess they have a choice of locations.
Huh. Let's see. MS Now's camera seems to be a little, I don't know, they may all be using the same feed.
Yeah.
CNN's is different.
Well, they're using different feeds, but who knows where the cameras are placed.
Yeah, that's why I kind of bounce around, see who has the better angles.
Yeah, I've got CNN up now.
It is indeed an honor
Here's
for us to
C-SPAN has a
today,
close up
Vice
on the
President
speaker.
Cheney.
That's what CNN is using.
I know your presence means a great deal to Mrs. Cheney and Liz and Mary and the entire Cheney family. So please be seated.
Yeah, I'm just going to let this roll and we can chime in anytime you want.
Yeah, just out of respect, I won't talk over the people speaking. But other than that, I'll blurt in.
Yeah, we don't have to be shy. I guess vice presidents also design their own funerals. You know, that's a big formal thing with presidents. They spend a lot of time designing their funerals. It's a very formal process.
The plans for the reigning monarch of England are the same way. They get updated yearly.
Yeah. And each president, I mean, it's a very formal process for presidents. I don't know if it is for vice presidents, but probably is.
Probably.
And can you imagine? Can you even begin to imagine what sort of funeral Trump's planning for himself?
I just know the coffin's likely to be gold.
He'll probably try to get Britain to loan him that golden royal carriage he loves so much of theirs. He lusts after that carriage.
Could the man's taste be any more cheesy than it is?
Yeah, and it just gets worse every time I see it. He's added more. I noticed yesterday that the mantle, they must have 8 or 10, I don't even know what those things are on the mantle. They look like big candelabras or something.
Yeah, it gets worse every time.
Yeah.
I really love the cathedral. I only got out there once when I was living.
Great place. There are a couple things I always suggest to tourists that are little friends or family that come to town and I always say touring that place is really cool.
And I always look up the new gargoyles and that are going on the church.
Yeah. They have a who was the young gay man who was murdered in out west and became kind of an icon? what was his name? They moved him. They have a little chapel there where they moved his body. It's really neat.
Huh.
Now, who's this? He looks familiar, but I can't quite place him. Thing is, C-SPAN's feed is just raw, so you don't have anchors telling you who people are. But I'd rather talk over it myself than listen to the network anchors.
Here we come with the first speaker.
Yeah, I'm trying to see who he is. He looks familiar. Oh, that's his doctor.
Ah,
That's who that is. Oh, I need to get the volume up. Well, oh, he hadn't said anything yet. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's his doctor.
President and Dr. Biden.
That's his heart
President and Mrs.
surgeon.
Bush, Vice Presidents Harris, Pence, Quayle, and Gore, distinguished guests and friends.
Huh.
We gather
He-
today.
he-
in
he's
this
the one who
holy and magnificent space,
Replaced his heart or
1
whatever
week
they
before
did.
Thanksgiving, to give thanks for the life of Richard Bruce Cheney, the 46th Vice President of the United States, and to thank his family, Mrs. Cheney, Liz, Mary, Phil, Heather, Elizabeth,
He's a commentator
Kate,
on
Grace,
CNN
Sam,
a lot.
Philip, Sarah, and Richard. Thank them for sharing him with us. I'm Jonathan Reiner, and I was privileged to be the Vice President's cardiologist. I'll admit, I'm not very good at letting go. But it can take a village to care for a complicated patient, and I want to acknowledge the many doctors and nurses here with us today who took such magnificent care of the Vice President. Over a span of 27 years, Vice President Cheney gifted me with his trust, and there's nothing more sacred between a doctor and their patient than trust. I'm happy to report that I haven't given many eulogies. No one wants a doctor who's great at funerals. But I stand here this morning deeply honored to tell you about my remarkable patient, Dick Cheney. 20 years before I met the Vice President, his career in elected office almost ended before it began when he suffered a heart attack during his first campaign for Congress. He was only 37. What Dick Cheney didn't know at the time, because his doctors never told him, was that they thought it would be best for him to withdraw from the race, that after the heart attack, a vigorous campaign might be too much for him. They didn't know Dick Cheney. Or more likely, maybe they did know Dick Cheney and no one had the guts to tell him to quit. So after a period of rest, he told Wyoming's voters that he was up for the challenge. He said a little hard work never hurt anybody. And later in the summer, he resumed his campaign, won that election, and then 5 more. For a man with very complex heart disease, the Vice President was the easiest patient to care for. He was meticulously compliant with his prescribed treatment. As it pertained to his health, he lived by the motto, when in doubt, check it out. He never allowed politics to influence his personal healthcare decisions, and not once in all my time as his doctor did he try to write or change a single word of a statement I issued.
Ha!
There was only one
That's
time
different
in my
than you know
entire
who.
tenure with the Vice President that he said no to a medical recommendation
Trump
from him.
edits all his doctors.
It was on September 11th, 2001. I had an appointment to see him that day at the White House for a scheduled checkup. I don't typically make house calls, but sometimes I'm willing to make an exception. In advance of the visit, my colleague, Colonel Lou Hoffman, the Vice President's wonderful full-time White House doctor, had arranged for some routine blood tests. But before the tubes could be sent to the lab, our world changed. Amazingly, even with the chaos and horror of that day, somehow late in the afternoon, the blood samples found their way to a lab. In the early evening, while the Vice President was on the move to an undisclosed location, Lou called to tell me that our patient's potassium level was dangerously, maybe even lethally high. I thought that the result was probably erroneous, an artifact of the prolonged delay in processing the blood. But we needed to be sure. I was worried about him. I asked Lou if we could repeat the test right away, but the vice president firmly said, no, not today. I didn't think that was the day to argue with him. You might think that taking care of a public figure, particularly one who carried nuclear launch codes, could be a bit intimidating. But the vice president was an unassuming man. His calls to me, even when originating from the White House, always began in the same modest way. Hi, John, it's Dick Cheney. Prior to the 2000 election, one of my young cardiology fellows, who somehow had never heard of Dick Cheney, asked the soon-to-be vice president of the United States what he did for a living. The soon-to-be vice president answered, government work. He was also very grateful and very generous. Prior to taking office in 2001, the Vice President, Mrs. Cheney, quietly donated a large gift to George Washington University, which became the founding support for our Heart Institute, enabling us to provide defibrillators to churches in the poorest parts of the nation's capital and pacemakers to patients in the poorest parts of the world. In his 2006 eulogy for President Ford, Vice President Cheney referred to his boss, the 38th President of the United States, as the still point in the turning wheel. It's a beautiful image derived from a passage in a T.S. Eliot poem. I remember hearing his words then and thinking how aptly the phrase described the Vice President himself. In all our time together, in moments of true existential risk for him, the Vice President was always the calmest person in the room, including me. One evening in July 2010, as he lay literally dying in the cardiac surgical intensive care unit, I told the Vice President that the mechanical heart assist device scheduled for the next day couldn't wait until morning. It would be too late. He looked for a moment towards Miss Cheney, Liz, and Mary, and then said calmly, okay, let's do it. That's all he said. Okay, let's do it. Months later, as he recalled that night, he said that he thought he would probably die, and he was at peace with it. The Latin word for heart is cor. It's also the source for the word courage. To have heart is to have courage. I don't think courage is necessarily the absence of fear. Rather, it's the ability to persevere even in the presence of fear. Time and time again, that's what Vice President Cheney was able to do. His wasn't a false courage cloaked by a thin veneer of bravado, but rather a genuine fortitude in the face of true mortal peril. He lived most of his adult life chased by a relentless disease intent on killing him, but he never looked over his shoulder. He only looked ahead. The hospitalization to implant the ventricular assist device was long and complicated. He was in the ICU for more than a month.
Wow.
But not for a single moment without his family watching over him.
Wow.
When I entered his ICU room on his sickest days, I would often find Mrs. Cheney at the base of the
He
bed,
had good insurance.
rubbing his feet.
I bet.
Liz and Mary took turns sleeping in the hospital. He just
there's
barely
Liz
survived.
Cheney there. You know, I keep.
But the device ultimately enabled him to recover and lasted 20 months until he was gifted with a new heart.
Surprised.
Today, as we remember the Vice President's life, I ask you also to think about the anonymous family who, in their time of terrible grief 13 years ago, donated the heart of someone they treasured to a stranger they would never know. It was a blessing and an act of love. A gift that gave him many more summer afternoons on the Snake River with his fly rod, and most profoundly, precious time to watch his 7 grandchildren grow up. This was what was most important to Dick Cheney. At a recent birthday party, he told them, "I am so proud of all of you." He was an American patriot and a man who loved his family. I was honored to be his doctor. It was an even greater honor to be his friend.
I think that's a side of people you don't see, that even when you disagree with them, there are people that he loves and supports.
Yeah, and people say he was truly funny. He really had his sense of humor. I don't know how I can reconcile his policy choices with.
Well, I'm that way with some of the arch conservatives I occasionally still associate with. It's for the life of me, I cannot see why they believe what they believe. But at the same time, I know that in their private lives, they are good, honest people.
Yeah, and that's the difference with our pal Trump.
Right. In his private life, he's just as messed up as.
He's a psychotic criminal.
Yeah.
And that's why he wasn't invited to this funeral.
As someone who grew up in the same town, Casper,
went
to the
Pete
same
Williams.
high school, enjoyed the same wide open spaces.
He was press secretary.
I can't think of anybody who
Cheney
better
was
embodied Wyoming
at the
values
Pentagon
than Dick Cheney.
Yeah.
He was comfortable in the saddle.
And he was
on
at
horseback.
NBC all those years.
He judged people by what they accomplished and what they stood for. He loved the state where he grew up and met Lynn. And Wyoming loved him back, electing him 6 times to the House of Representatives. He enjoyed the solitude of the Wyoming wilderness, too, and was an expert at finding the best places to deploy a fly rod. In fact, if you wanted his attention in the office,
I've never
and you
believed
saw
fly
that the
fishing
Orbis
is
catalog
real.
was open on his desk, you knew to come back some other time. For my 50th birthday, he offered to let me come with him for a day's fly fishing in the Tetons. I told him that the best gift I could give in return was to respectfully decline, because I'm no fisherman, and I knew that if I spoke even 10 words all day, he would say I talk too much. When I was his press secretary, I once wrote a news release that contained the word bureaucrat. He crossed it out and substituted federal official. As the son of a man who worked for the Agriculture Department, he respected people who chose to serve their country. Many Americans got their first look at Dick Cheney during the Gulf War, Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. My office at the Pentagon was the place where letters made their first stop, and one in particular stands out in my memory. A woman in Indiana wrote to say this: "During these difficult times for our country, it is reassuring to turn on the television and see someone in charge of our military who is plain speaking, resolute, and strong." And then she added, "I find these qualities to be very attractive. I'm not sure whether you're married, but if you're ever in Indianapolis, you can look me up." I showed this letter to Secretary Cheney, and he took it home to brag about it. Shortly after Dick Cheney became Secretary of Defense, one of our senior policy officials had a request for me as the Pentagon spokesman. A New York Times reporter wanted to know more about a new effort by the George H.W. Bush administration to reach a nuclear weapons agreement with the Soviet Union. The official sought permission to give the Times some background. I relayed the request to Secretary Cheney, who gave his okay, but he said, "Make absolutely sure our guy talks it over with the White House first to get a clear idea of what he can say." The following Sunday morning, the paper revealed that the president would soon propose a new negotiating tactic. The problem was that the president planned to reveal that strategy in a speech on Monday, and he was none too pleased to see it spelled out beforehand. I received a call at home on Sunday informing me that this official and I were to report to Secretary Cheney's office first thing Monday morning. We walked in and sat down, braced for the worst. The secretary said, "I've got some good news and some bad news. Which do you want first?" So I asked for the bad news. He looked at us sternly and he said, "The bad news is that the President of the United States is very angry with you both." And then I asked for the good news and he said, "I only have to fire one of you." I could tell he was joking. I'm not sure the senior official realized it. And then Secretary Cheney said, "It's okay, guys. I told the president it was my idea." He could have told President Bush that it was our fault, but he took the blame and saved us from ourselves. When the boss that you serve cleans up after your mistakes, you can bet that inspires loyalty. And Dick Cheney demonstrated that kind of decency and concern for all the people who served him during his more than 40 years in public life.
In his staff, people were
In
loyal to him
1991,
who
a
worked for
magazine
him.
planned to run a story outing me.
I think that
I knew it
comes
was
down to
coming,
what we are
so I went
talking
up to his
about.
office and offered to resign.
Even if you
He
disagree
wouldn't hear
with
it.
someone, you can
And for several
respect.
days after that article appeared, he would call me on the direct line to my desk at the Pentagon to ask how I was doing and to tell me to get on with the job. Washington attracts ambitious people driven by a desire to serve their country, but many of those who become big names acquire staffers and
I
then
mean, I have
cast
a
them
friend
aside
of
as they
almost
rise in
45 years that I know
Not
to
Dick
be
Cheney.
a devoted
Throughout
family
his
man
life,
who
on his steady
adores
rise to the
his
quarters of power,
children
his
and
circle of friends
grandchildren.
kept growing.
The
He did
fact
not
that I hang
abandon
up on
those
him
who
at
helped him
regular
along the way.
intervals.
And when George W. Bush chose him to be
You
the
mean
vice
because of
presidential
his
candidate in 2000,
because of his political
their first
views? You
campaign
mean?
stop
Right.
together was a
Oh
gesture,
yeah.
a demonstration of Dick's loyalty to his home
And
state.
it isn't
I
hanging
don't
up,
think
it's
he
a
was worried about
slam.
locking up Wyoming's 3
Yeah.
electoral votes. Those of us fortunate to work for him knew that he had a sly sense of humor. He loved to tell a story about attending a political event when he ran for re-election as Wyoming's congressman. He said he walked up to one old rancher, stuck out his hand and said, "I'm Dick Cheney, I'm running for Congress and I'd like to have your vote." And the rancher replied, "You got it. That guy we got in there now is no damn good." In my 7 years of working for him in the Congress and at the Pentagon, I seldom came away from a meeting with him without thinking that I'd learned something about politics and government. Lynn captured that experience perfectly when she introduced him at the 2000 Republican Convention. Here's what she said: "Conversations with Dick have a way of taking unexpected turns. Problems get redefined, and you find yourself thinking about things in new ways." And she added, "I cannot imagine the discussion that would not benefit from his presence." Dick Cheney was a good and decent man. He loved his family and his home state. His highest aspiration was serving the country. And I'm so lucky and so deeply grateful that I was along for part of that ride.
I wonder if Mary Madeline's going to speak. She worked for him and was a big fan of Cheney. Huh. I haven't seen her in a long time on the TV. Mary Madeline. Have you seen her anywhere in a long time?
No, I've actually been kind of worried about her because
Yeah.
I just wondered if she had been ill or starting to fail mentally or whatever, because you never see her, even though hubby, old Snakehead is.
Yeah, he's everywhere. Yeah. There's W. Here comes W. This might be a good listen. He always rises to the occasion at these things with a bit of humor. I mean, it's amazing how I miss him now.
He's looking pretty good, isn't he?
He looks good.
Lynn, Liz, and Mary, and all the Cheney family, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate this chance to say a few words about a man I was proud to call my vice president and my friend. Though not a happy assignment, I do consider it an easy one because there was so much to like and admire about Dick Cheney. Dick was a stoical man, and I doubt he left this life with any complaints about the time given to him or its end. He was also a grateful man, grateful above all for 3 loyal, loving women who shared in his journey. As I quickly discovered in 2000, when you choose one Cheney, you get 4. His busy and purposeful life was an adventure they experienced together. In a family so close, you dread the day when the circle is broken. Lynn and the girls, Heather, Phil, and all the grandchildren, he sure loved you all. And he was proud of his family. I hope it helps to know that many people in this country share your sense of loss, and we're here today as your friends. 25 years ago, I had a big choice to make, a big job to fill. I want to know all my options, so I enlisted the help of a distinguished former White House Chief of Staff and Secretary of Defense to lead my search for running mate. Dick Cheney and I went through the files name by name. We talked over the various qualities I was looking for in a vice president: preparedness, mature judgment, rectitude, and loyalty. Above all, I wanted someone with the ability to step into the presidency without getting distracted by the ambition to seek it. After weeks of these meetings, I began to have a thought I could not shake. I realized the best choice for the vice president was the man sitting right in front of me. And I told him that.
Yeah.
At such a moment, most in this position would have jumped at the chance, but Dick stayed detached, and he analyzed it. Before I made my decision, he insisted on giving me a complete rundown of all the reasons I should not choose him. He also heard one of my top advisors was against the choice, so Dick invited him to make the case. As he did so, he sat there unfazed and expressionless. In the end, I trusted my judgment. I remember my dad's words when I told him what I was planning. He said, "Son, you couldn't pick a better man." The way this all unfolded followed a pattern in Dick Cheney's life. Summing up his career a few years ago, he said, "A few breaks came my way, and one job always led to another, in a life that's taken me far to more places than I ever expected." That was Dick's typically understated version of events, but there's a little more to the story. His abilities were self-evident without need of calculation or self-promotion. His talent and restraint exceeded his ego. Even before the Cheney name reached the national stage, people always saw something in the man, solid, reliable, and rare. One of the first to really notice was Lynn Vincent. She can recall a time in their college years when Dick, as he freely admitted, lacked direction and needed some straightening out.
He had a wild youth.
I think we had
Really
that
wild.
in common.
Yeah.
That was Lynn's kind of project. And it did not take her long. He said many times that his life would have turned out a whole lot different if he had never met her. It may explain how in just over a decade, a guy can go from laying transmission lines outside Cheyenne to serving as chief of staff of the President of the United States. In Dick's telling, those years working for Gerald Ford were special and formative. He cherished the association, and the high regard went both ways. In his memoir, President Ford described Dick's steadiness, his low-key style, and his absolute loyalty. I know exactly what he meant. These are not traits easy to come by in Washington. Being calm, reticent, undramatic, and untrustworthy are not everyone's formula for success in politics. But they were the Cheney way, and they worked. I'm reminded of a renowned senator who once gave this advice to a junior colleague. Perhaps he said you could occasionally allow yourself the luxury of an unexpressed thought.
That's a
Dick
good
Cheney
line.
was like that, sparing and measured with words. In a profession that attracts talkers, he was a thinker and a listener. And when he did speak up, conveying thoughts in that even tone of voice, that orderly, unexcitable manner, you knew you were getting the best of a highly disciplined mind. No colleague, no legislator, no foreign leader who ever met Dick Cheney ever doubted that they were dealing with a serious man. Of course, not every political counselor is cut out to be a political candidate. But Dick Cheney put himself to the test and never lost an election. In fact, it happens that he and I both ran for Congress in 1978.
Huh.
And let me just say the Republican wave didn't
Oh, I
reach
forgot
West
that.
Texas that year.
Huh.
He told me a few times what it's like to campaign in Wyoming. Lots of small gatherings and long drives. It's easy to imagine the impression that young Dick Cheney made when he was asking for the vote. I wish more Americans got to know Dick Cheney the way the folks in Casper, Cody, and Laramie got to know him. Smart and polished, without airs. Courteous and approachable, seeing everyone as an equal, a gentleman by nature, and a true man of the West. Dick was funny and easygoing in a style that his public image never caught up with. Though we can all agree he wasn't your standard issue politician. If any voters came hoping for a kind word and a hug, they'd have to settle for the kind word. But you can't question the appeal of the only person from America's Mountain West ever elected to national office. On that score, history should record that I chose my vice president not once, but twice. In 2004, he offered to step aside in case I wanted to replace him. I thought about it for a while, but after 4 years of seeing how he treated people, how he carried responsibility, how he handled pressure and took the hits, I arrived back at the conclusion that they do not come any better than Dick Cheney. Colleagues from every chapter of his career will tell you that he lifted the standards of those around him just by being who he was, so focused and so capable. In our years in office together, on the quiet days and on the hardest ones, he was everything a president should expect in his second in command. In moments of testing, Dick Cheney was the model of concentration, alertness, and composure. His memoir was titled My Time. His time produced an old breed of public servant, defined by their substance and character. This was a vice president totally devoted to protecting the United States and its interests. There was never any agenda or angle beyond that. You did not know Dick Cheney unless you understood his greatest concerns and ambitions were for his country. Across 40 years, his service was consistent, faithful, and noble. All in all, not a bad showing for a career and a life, especially when you consider his sheer physical endurance. As Dr. Rayner pointed out, he became an authority on cardiovascular disease and a marvel at what resourceful doctors and one very determined patient can accomplish. Dick had faced down fears and hardships, but he really didn't speak about them. The reward was more of a life than he ever expected, including 7 grandchildren to complete the picture. One of them, Richard, even asked his grandfather to attend kindergarten class for a show and tell. I wish I'd have been there. As a matter of fact, the teacher told Dick that was the most exciting show and tell since the morning a little girl brought her cow to class. That might have been among Dick's last moments in the spotlight. In his final years, he was content to go his way. At a rare public appearance in 2022, he offered a kind of parting reflection. He said, when you can look back on a lifetime in politics and government, and what you value most are the friendships, then I guess you've done all right. A lot of us know that feeling as we say an affectionate farewell to the 46th Vice President of the United States. It's something to be cherished when a man of his caliber has been your colleague and friend. The son of Wyoming, son of Marjorie and Richard Cheney of Casper, went far in this world and in our own lives left a very fine mark. We are grateful for his good life. We honor his service, and we pray that somewhere up the trail, we will meet him again.
Well, I'm going to wrap there because I'm going to go make lunch.
Okie dokie.
Now, I do want to tell one story that reminded me of Lamar Alexander, you know, the senator from Tennessee, former governor. I actually knew him through someone else, but we were having a conversation one time, and he told the story about when Dick Cheney was looking for a vice president for Bush and was head of the search committee, and Lamar was on their list. And so they met, and Lamar told us that he asked Dick Cheney, he says, well, what are your qualifications? What's your criteria? And when Cheney checked through their specific qualifications, Lamar said to Cheney, well, Dick, that's you. And Lamar figured out from the get-go Cheney had designed a series of criteria that only applied to him.
Which is how he became vice president.
Lamar Alexander was convinced that was the plan. That was Cheney's plan all along, maybe not Bush's.
You'll have to include that story when you do an edit of this conversation we've been having.
Yeah. And then my understanding was that Bush and Cheney really did not have a whole lot of contact in the later years, because Cheney never forgave him for not giving Scooter Libby a full pardon. You know, Scooter Libby was his chief of staff who got convicted and sentenced in that CIA leak case that Valerie Plame or something, that whole thing. And Cheney wanted a pardon for him, and Trump didn't do it. Bush didn't do it. Trump ended up doing it, giving Scooter Libby a pardon. But Cheney never forgave him, and they didn't really have a whole lot of contact. That's what I've seen reported about their relationship.
Did Bush ever give the reasoning for not giving?
I don't know.
Huh.
Yeah. But well, that was a nice little stroll through history.
Okay, hon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. So long.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Trail Mix, where the nuts might be a little stale, but the company is always fresh.